Hello and welcome to this OpenTX quick tip. This is a very quick one about a warning that you might see if you power your radio up and you get this thing talking about a switch warning. Now the switch warning is there to let you know that the switches aren't in their default position, and the default position on all of the OpenTX radios is all when the switches are in their up position or their most backward position. So because SA isn't in its backward rear position, I'm getting a warning about that, and it won't go away unless I hit enter or pop that switch position into that default backward place that it wants to power the radio on. So if all the switches are in their default back position, which was what the radio is set for, then when I power it up, it's going to power up and it's going to be happy. It's going to go straight into the standard bits and pieces. Now I would always recommend when you're setting up a radio in OpenTX, and I have loads of different series on the channel for the QX7 radio that we're using here for this demonstration, the x-lite, the Tyrannus, or the X9D as it's sometimes called as well. And I would always say, if you're going to set a radio up, make sure that the backward upward position of the switches that make the radio turn on without an error are the ones that will give you a fail-safe or a safe condition for the model. So for example, I might want to use this switch here for arming a quadcopter. Now by default I want to make sure that in the top position, like it is right now, I'd say that that was disarmed. So whenever I turn the radio on, if the radio didn't error, then guess what? I knew that it was in a disarmed position, and maybe any other position I'd set up in Betaflight or iNav or whatever to be armed. And that means that if the radio comes on, I don't get an error. When I plug the battery into my quadcopter, it's not immediately going to try and arm itself. Another common one is something like landing gear on a fixed wing plane. I would always set it so that the switch in the position that doesn't make the radio error is the one where the landing gear is down. And that's because typically I'm going to be plugging a battery into a model like that when it's sat on the ground with the wheels extended, and I want to make sure that when the radio connects, the first thing it doesn't do is retract all the landing gear and drop the model onto the concrete. So do think about the switch position first of all, and make sure that the safe positions for the startup of your model are all with the switches in that position. It's just good practice. But if for some reason you can't put the switches in those default positions, you can tell the radio to ignore individual switches on startup or to set your own custom positions when it initially starts up. Now this is the reason that this video is a re-upload. This is the same video with the exception of this element from the one that I posted a couple of weeks ago. So I need to give a massive shout out to a gentleman called Philip D. Philip, thank you so much for coming back and letting me know that this is something that you can do on the radio. I do love this community. You're always learning stuff. So thank you very much for pointing that out to me. So there are a couple of things you can do if you maybe have switch A and you need to be in it in a different position. The first is if we press menu and page and we scroll down again to halfway down the second page, you've got all these pre-flight checks. You've got the checklist, which I'll be doing a video on shortly. You've got whether or not the throttle warning is going to work, and also here the switch warning as well. You can also even check warnings for the different potentiometer positions. Those are the rotary controls. But for now, we're interested in switch warning. Now what we can do is we can actually turn on and off individual switch checks. So if I just hit enter, you can see that switch A is no longer being checked. Similarly, if I highlight B and just click enter, that one isn't bothered as well. Now if I turn the radio back off and just put switch A and B in any random position and then power it up,
Welcome to OpenTX.
then this time we won't get any warning because it isn't checking those two switches, and there we are, we're all okay. And put those switches back to default. So again, menu, page, scroll about halfway down in the second menu. This is the menu where you do your naming and also the binding, so it should be one you're reasonably familiar with. Then what I'm going to do, let me just turn on those two checks again. You can tell the radio that you want to have very specific positions. So if I just roll it back so that the entire row is highlighted, and then I move the switches to whichever positions I want, maybe those need to be in the middle position, that one needs to be forward for the model that I'm setting up, and then press and hold enter, you'll see that now those positions have been stored as the switch checked for this particular model. So now if I turn it off and turn it on with the switches in those particular positions,
Welcome to OpenTX.
I will not get a warning because those are the ones that it has to be in. Or if I put one of the switches out of position, which I've just stored, and do the same thing,
Welcome to OpenTX. Switch warning.
then this time I get the switch warning because SD is not in the middle position, and once it is in the middle position, then it will go off. So that's the couple of things. Again, big thank you to Philip for letting me know that that was something you could do to actually store. I didn't actually know that, so now we all do. My personal advice on this would be I would always make it so that every model is the same and all the switches in the rear upward position are the safe ones, and then you always know, even if you're moving on to a radio or you have multiple different radios, you know that when you do your pre-flight checks, you just kind of push all the switches into the safe position before you power up the radio. If you found that video useful or like the content, then please hit the like and subscribe button down below. If you want to go the extra step, you can become a Patreon of the Painless 360 channel and help provide support for what I do here. All the videos created here are put into playlists, so if you're interested in a particular topic, have a look at the playlist, and they all are organised in there to make them easier to use. If you're not sure if there's a video for your particular problem or topic you want to know more about, then add Painless 360 to the Google search term that you're interested in, and that should find the video, article or content about the particular thing that you're interested in having a look at.